What profession will get wiped out in 10 years? Story 1. I used to do court transcription, not stenography. Basically, I download an audio file and type what's spoken in the courtroom verbatim, within style rules. The industry has been trying to implement speech-to-text software for years, but it's been too crap up until very recently. I've since upskilled to an editor, where instead of typing manually, I correct the generated transcript. It still struggles with speaker differentiation and formatting, but it's improved so drastically within the last 3 years that it's only a matter of time until traditional transcriptionists are no longer necessary. Reply 1. If a lawyer believes a transcript is inaccurate, they can move to have it excluded from evidence. I was on a jury for a case where we were frustrated we didn't have a transcript of something. It wasn't until after the case that I found that the defense successfully contested the accuracy of the transcript. Reply 2. Most of the time in the jurisdictions I work in Australia, they will go through transcripts before releasing them to parties, and also with counsel at the beginning of the day, and list out any mistakes. We then get a list and it is corrected and reissued. They might have a bit of back and forth about it, but it's never been seen as a big deal. I'm sure there are cases out there where it did cause bigger issues, but they tell juries here that transcriptionists are human and make errors sometimes, and to rely on the evidence they think they heard. Transcripts are viewed as just an aid. Reply 3. I was on a jury, and a big debate after the trial was the exact verbiage an officer used on the stand. We requested the transcript in the deliberation room, and that's when we were told we don't have one. So they ushered us all back into the courtroom, and they played the video recording of the entire officer's testimony, both sides, so as to not sway us with partial information. It worked out for the better, not guilty that day. Reply 4. I work in this field everyone is talking about. They've been saying the same for decades. Cassette tapes would be the demise of stenography. Will speech translation be used? No, an audio recording is not more accurate than a written transcript, for a myriad of reasons. It's not searchable for means of discovery, so it's tied to a written index and written transcript. Audio fails, deep accents, speedy lawyers, mumbling witnesses, readbacks needed, coughing, pages rustling, technical glitches. Audio has never been the standard and still is not. It's the backup to the stenographer. It's the videographer. Most importantly, the job of a stenographer is to guard the record. In almost all legal proceedings, a transcript is not legitimate or admissible unless it's been certified by a notary stenographer, barring admin hearings. Further, it's not all criminal. There are huge trials, stockholder litigations, patent lawsuits, and big money, my field, and they never allow digital court reporters, audio techs, to guard the record. What are appeals based on? There has to be a written record, verified and certified. So while Dragon and other speech translations can aid, it does not capture the spoken word any better, and human editors are necessary to research exhibits and verify complicated terms, spellings, accents, etc. Sometimes that's a separate person. Sometimes it's the stenographer checking it. The audio can help verify later, and sometimes the audio is played for a jury instead of read. But it's still cited against the legal document, the transcript. But deposition transcripts are delivered afterward with an errata sheet for the dependent to note any errors. It is highly unlikely a transcript makes it to a jury and gets thrown out for being inaccurate. In fact, most contested transcripts are taken down by the audio techs, and that's why entire cities switched back to stenographers after finding audio systems were a wasted expense that caused an enormous backlog in our legal system. Look it up. Your right to a speedy trial depends on it. At least here in America, your right to appeal depends on a written record. Accuracy matters. Transcripts are far more than an aid. Reply 5. My wife did something like that, but in the medical field, and really enjoyed it. She worked with doctors who would wear an Apple Watch that picked up all the audio, then she would transcribe it. It was way cheaper and easier than Dragon dictation, and the doctors loved it. Eventually, the founder got greedy and sold the company to Nuance, the owners of the Dragon dictation software the doctors were trying to get away from. They fired half of the transcribers and overwhelmed the ones that were left. Then as the remaining transcribers left, they started outsourcing, and the doctors just dropped the service after that, just to get rid of an objectively better competitor. That was around 2020, and I'm sure AI would have taken it over anyway. Story 2, by the looks of it, being a federal employee. Reply 1. I've been saying that people used to cozy up to federal government jobs, but if they're no longer secure, people aren't going to take them, and they're going to have trouble filling the roles with good candidates. Then, we can just hire Elon to do it all with one of his many perfect private companies, right? Reply 2. My wife works for the FedGov. About 9 years in at this point, moved from Title 42 to Title 5 about 3 years ago, thankfully, or she'd be fired right now. Instability is the biggest cause of stress right now. She's also 9 years into paying into the pension fund. So going to the private sector feels like leaving one of the reasons you are in the public sector to begin with, and then you're behind on your 401k because you've done this. Story 3. 12 years ago, I got a job as a computer operator, basically spending all day entering commands into a green screen from a checklist, and I thought back then that the job would be automated by AI within years. Today, I'm still in the industry, promoted now though, and I know there's a guy in my company doing exactly the job I did years ago. The morale of the story, there are a lot of jobs out there that could be replaced by AI, but most companies aren't willing to put in that investment unless it becomes super cheap to do so. Reply 1. There are a lot of companies who have websites not doing the work yet, where staff come in the next day to process onto systems what the consumer thought was an automated form on the website. We're a long way off from AI won't cut your hair, put up scaffolding, or look after kids or old people. Most jobs you deal with people or materials are safe. People love human interaction, and I still get phoned at work to answer the most mundane questions. Teach your kids lots of skills, but above all, to be good people. If you have that covered, you will always work. Reply 2. The biggest thing is AI is not deterministic. There's no way to tell an AI something and get the exact same response each time. The unpredictability of it will drive a lot of people nuts. I just built a chatbot for someone and they asked me to make it say and respond the exact same way each time. I told them I couldn't really do that. Even with fine-tuning and setting up a RAG system, the response each time would sometimes vary. There's no real way to test for that. A lot of people in management don't like that. Then there are others who don't care about having a customer support bot. They don't care if it's good, as long as they don't have to hire someone. But things where management likes to micromanage, I suspect we'll see some AI dissatisfaction soon. Reply 3. When cars became mainstream, the horse industry was decimated. 99% of the industry was shuttered. New York City alone had over 200,000 horses in 1900, with at least another 100,000 working in the horse industry in the city. There are still people who do those jobs in New York City today, but just at a fraction of the scale. There are a handful of farriers shoeing horses in New York City today when there used to be hundreds. The same trends play out in every technological transformation. Sailmaking, boiler-making, typists and secretaries, draftsmen. The list goes on, but they weren't wiped out entirely. There are still a few around today, but just at a fraction of the peak numbers. I suspect the same thing will happen with tech work. Reply 4. That's been my guess as to how this AI bubble goes. Jobs will consolidate and there will be fewer overall, but the ones that are available become more complicated. You'll be assisting AI, but as AI can take over lower and lower functions itself, only higher-level functions are left to humans. But as fewer and fewer humans are needed to do those high-level functions, fewer and fewer people will have the opportunity to start at the lower-level functions that allow you to gain the higher-level functions. Reply 5. We do CNC machining, and the rumbling in the industry is AI is going to be able to program machines and put programmers out of a job. While this would save employers a boatload of money as programmers are well paid, I'll believe it when I see it. We will see how badly leaders want to adopt this when AI programs their $500,000 CNC mill to crash and cause a $50,000 repair bill and weeks of downtime. Story 4. Journalist, apparently. Reply 1. I'm a part of a locally owned newspaper in South Central Kansas. We knew the only way for this to work was to make it a hyper-local county paper. We have a strong newsroom and have made a positive impact in our local communities. You'd be amazed at some of the good old boy crap that goes on in smaller communities. We also had to be super engaged in our communities as well, hosting concerts and events as well as creating our own local group, much like a chamber of commerce. We also have a crazy YouTube channel, much like the old public access TV shows. With all that said, there is no way in hell I would ever be a part of a large newspaper chain. They're often owned by hedge funds and picked to the bare bones, giving the world the crappiest journalism known to mankind. Makes me sick. Please, support your local papers and tell the big boys to suck it. Reply 2. As someone who started a journalism degree in 1990, when jobs were plentiful, only to graduate into a recession where those entry-level jobs were being staffed by people with 5 to 10 years of experience, as well as mortgages and kids, I feel this. The rise of the internet, the expectation that everything should be free, and the right systematically undermining beliefs in all the institutions that were designed to keep them in check have served as a death knell for the industry. The die was cast long before AI reared its head. Welcome to Skynet. Reply 3. Last summer after I graduated high school, I was offered a job at a news platform, they didn't have a TV channel or newspaper, to figure out their AI. I'm not good with tech, but I am very good at writing. Basically, their goal was to lower the amount of work being put on the workers they had because they had a really tiny amount of staff compared to any other news platform. They were trying to make these avatars of the reporters to use in their videos so that their employees could have more time finding and creating stories. The thing couldn't work with facial expressions or weird mouth movements or anything like that. Another thing was having AI write their articles, and then fact-checking and then rewriting in their style. I worked with stories that had already been published to compare the AI version to the human version. The AI version consistently repeated the same points instead of expanding on the story. It also would take the assumptions already made by other news platforms and put them in there. These guys were doing their best to go for unbiased, but they do lean ever so slightly conservative. I'd also have to insert where a quote was needed, highlight grammatical errors, and things like that. It was easier to just find the info and write up an article than have the AI write the article, find what was wrong with it, and then rewrite it in the style you needed. They laid me off after a week because they realized that they had started the project too early. The AI just wasn't where they needed it to be yet. However, it was a really interesting and informative week. Story 5, really hoping to see real estate agents disappear in the near future. Reply 1. I live in the US, but just started watching a Japanese drama called Honest Realtor, a comedy where the realtor gets cursed and cannot tell a lie, which tells me that even in Japan, realtors are generally not honest. It's all a scam. Reply 2. I followed my parents buying their home in Japan, and it's funny because Japanese realtors are extremely dishonest, but not for the reason you think. They would constantly undersell the property before they showed it to us, like saying this place only has a view from the second-story bedroom. But in reality, it has an amazing view of the city from anywhere in the house. Or they would say, there's only parking for one car, when you could easily fit 3 or 4 cars in the driveway. Even weirder, when my parents sold their old place, the offers they got were 30 to 40% higher than what the real estate agents said they'd be able to get for it. They're lying to make everyone happy with the transaction. The buyer gets a better house than they expected, and the seller gets more money than they thought. I don't know if this is super common, but with the 3 agencies we worked with, it seemed to be a consistent behavior. Reply 3. Realtor here. Yeah, we will be like interior designers or personal chefs. Service providers everyone wants but doesn't need. The public hates us, however, that's because there are a lot of inexperienced or lazy agents. Remember, commissions are negotiable. There is also this idea that agents have glamorous, high-paying jobs because there is a push to be, look at me, I'm successful online to attract more business. I do think stricter pay structures, flat fee, salary, or hourly would force many brokerages to let go of agents who don't produce or are shady. Another joke is that many top producers just sell 4 expensive homes a year. You might hire an agent that has no idea what they are doing but are a top producer. Having said all that, we provide a service for sellers who might not have the time to show the home, deal directly with the pandering of buyers, or want to deal with negotiations directly. Buyers also like having agents for consultation reasons and because purchasing can be a difficult process. Very seldom do deals go without a hiccup. It's an emotional and personal business. It's not necessary to hire a realtor, but many still want the service. Reply 4. You just reminded me of when my husband and I bought our house. Our first realtor didn't want to be bothered showing us houses or sending us any listings. His recommendation was to drive around, and if we saw a house for sale in an area we liked, call him. Well, we drove around, saw a house for sale we liked, and called the number on the for sale sign for that house instead, and that was where we met Jackie. When I tell you I would go into battle for that woman, hot damn do I mean it. She was the epitome of that John Mulaney joke about realtors. On our first call, we spent over an hour on the phone discussing budgets, desired towns or cities, needs, wants, heating and sewer hookup preferences, bedrooms, yards, absolutely everything, and she delivered. Every single house tour, she was pointing out water damage, asbestos, signs of termites, proximity to airport noise, and random things that would impact our VA loan. She sent a strongly worded email to the seller's realtor of the house we ended up buying when he tried to screw us out of a couple of things to save on costs. Anyway, I know a lot of realtors get a bad rap, but if every realtor was Jackie, everyone would love having a realtor when helping them buy a house. Reply 5. Being a realtor used to have a lot of costs attached to it. You would have to take pictures, pay for the film to be developed, pay for prints to be made, pay for flyers and ad space in local magazines that were distributed to banks and grocery stores. You would have to spend your weekends holding open houses and answering questions about places. The whole process would take a few months, and once you were done, your 3% commission on a $150,000 house would be $4,500. Now, thanks to the internet, most of those things are free. No one does open houses anymore. A house sells within a week of hitting the market, and a 3% commission on a $419,000 house, the current average price of a house in America, is $12,570. Realistically, the commissions should have come down years ago, but they never did. Story 6. About 10 years ago, there were similar questions being asked, and a common answer was truck driving. People thought that driverless trucking was going to happen soon. I put a significant chunk of my investment money into places working towards this tech. Thankfully, Volvo stock has done okay since then, but most others I've long since bailed on. It feels like we are no nearer to the driverless trucking tech taking over than we were back then. So whatever the popular answer here is, I won't believe it and I won't be making stock picks based on it. Reply 1. I think self-driving trucks are as far as they're going to go for a while. The lane keep assist is very impressive as of right now. I can let go of the steering wheel in rush hour traffic in LA, and the truck will stay in the lines just fine on its own. However, when the snow and ice come into play, you can no longer see the lines, and that's where self-driving trucks go out the window. Reply 2. I'm right there with you. Calling the current technology AI is already just marketing and hype. It's artificial, but the intelligence is really just the cumulative input of the dataset. It can combine and slice that data in new and compelling ways to create generative AI in ways we hadn't considered. That can be a good thing when put to the right use. And yes, some jobs will be made redundant, but it's not generating new ideas, new thoughts. In other words, even if this iteration of AI takes every job, it's only a matter of time until that data stagnation consumes itself. If no real person is a designer, who is feeding the design algorithms to improve? If we've got nothing to talk about or write about, who is feeding the LLM data models? AI is eventually going to run into the problem of getting high on its own supply when there's nothing but AI feeding into AI, if it hasn't already. Reply 3. I was a professional driver at the time that you were talking about when everyone was convinced driverless vehicles were just around the corner and would wipe out truck drivers, etc. The idea intrigued me, and I looked into it a lot at this time, reading everything I could find on the subject and the different technologies being created. I concluded at the time, and have been proven right, that it was a media and business fantasy and wasn't going to happen. All of the systems they were developing, all of the technology they used were always perfect condition, perfect predictability dependent. The roads are simply too complicated and too chaotic from the standpoint of the logical interpretation of computers. Put short, the roads are simply too human for a computer. I may eventually be proven wrong, but it's gone very quiet on that front recently. I think there's more of a chance of some much posher jobs being thrown to the computer wolves, long before it comes for the seemingly less complicated manual jobs originally predicted to be decimated. Reply 4. This is how I feel right now as a software engineer. Every day, we're inundated with claims that AI can completely replace the act of writing software, and every time I use it, I am at best saving 10% of my time. At worst, I'm wasting 20% of my time trying to get it to do what I want. On average, I think it's mildly useful, but the media ecosystem is just frothing at the mouth about how useless I am about to become. Don't get me wrong, I have used it to do some pretty heavy lifts, but in highly specific use cases. Rewrite this component from well-known framework A to well-known framework B is actually pretty neat. Ignore the fact that I spend, on a good week, 50% of my time actually writing code. I've yet to see anything AI is doing that approaches identifying high-priority tasks, problem-solving those tasks, breaking down the work meaningfully, mentoring juniors on how to approach the tasks, etc. It can go to meetings for me anytime, though. Story 7. Any sort of translation work. Reply 1. As a translator, I agree. When I started my career 8 years ago, I was translating full-time. 90% of what I do now is machine translation post-editing, and we're talking about working for a big pharmaceutical company. For those of you who mention real-time translation, that's called interpreting. Oral translation, interpreting, two different jobs. Reply 2. Note 5 to 10 years. I know people that already last year lost their jobs as translators. Extremely talented, educated people who speak 5, 6 languages with flawless grammar. Everyone talks about the poor quality of AI translation. True, it's not perfect, but now one of these talented translators can do the work of 5 with the help of AI. It is indeed sad because learning languages is becoming just a hobby, almost a mental luxury, not so much a necessity. Reply 3. We had to communicate with a French company, mostly English but contracts in French. The professional translator was irreplaceable. Contract language and a knowledge of local laws and customs were vital in her work. Unless there is a ton of private contracts available to train on, LLMs will suck at this in an expensive way. Story 8. Retirement. Reply 1. I'm on track to retire in 30 years. Both my wife and I put away 25% of our income and should retire and be able to live with about 70% of our current income. Compound interest is a beautiful thing. We used to only give out 10%, but after learning more about it, I've greatly increased my contributions. It's free to open any retirement account with many companies, and even $25 per month can result in over $100,000 with just 30 good years on the market. People have no clue what they're missing. Just put it into a mutual fund and chill. Story 9. I work as a master control operator, basically one of the people who monitors and edits the playlists that send TV programming to air. We monitor for graphics, closed captioning, audio, and video, and also serve as emergency recovery if the video or audio goes haywire. We also roll the commercial breaks for any live programming like the news or sporting events. We recently started using a new on-air system that has some strange kinks in it when it comes to live programming and doesn't seem to be designed for rapid in-the-moment adjustments. When we asked the engineers about it, they said they designed the program with stations that do not have a live operator in mind. The program also has auto-recovery options to save air if it senses an upcoming item has no CC, audio, or too much black video. If a spot fails for any reason, the system sees how long the upcoming outage would be and auto-fills it with pre-approved promos and graphics. It's already pretty standard in the industry that many TV stations are basically shadow stations that follow a main broadcast station, and when the main rolls a commercial break, the secondary takes that trigger and rolls its own break along with it. So all that combined, I have a strong feeling the purpose of this new system is to bug test and design an on-air program that can basically run and recover itself while following a mother station. You could then have a dozen or more stations all following the lead of one main station, which could eliminate 90% of operators, the only ones remaining being those who monitor those dozen stations at once, and do quick fixes for any stations that miss a trigger or have a random glitch. I don't think live TV could realistically be fully automated in a decade, but the amount of hands needed to do it will get smaller by the day. Reply 1. I really enjoyed reading your post. I also work in this industry. Over the last decade, I've seen the move away from dedicated tin to servers, to cloud, to SaaS. With each step, there's been the promise of stability, capacity, and speed. There has been some of that. But I've also seen reduced accessibility and an increase in the complexity of the system as a whole. It has felt like we are moving towards full automation for several years, but there are still so many aspects of the role that require bespoke analysis and diagnosis. It's difficult to predict what will happen in 1 year, let alone 5, but I'm hoping to ride out the next 8 years to make it to pensionable age. I can't see that happening. Reply 2. I think the last part of the industry to go would be live news and sports. Those do require in the moment human decision-making, even just for legal reasons. For example, some sports programs require that only one car manufacturer can advertise during specific quarters or halves. If one of those spots failed and the auto recovery put a competitive car manufacturer spot on it, could be a breach of contract. Reply 3. I started out as an MCO in the early 00s, worked my way up to programming manager, but we got bought out and my job got cut. When I started, we still used 3 or 4-inch tapes, then upgraded to DVC Pro and eventually to all digital. I can't even imagine how far technology has come since then. The new company let go of all the MCOs there and is completely automated. Not sure how they deal with live events, maybe they have one person to come in or use the news staff. But broadcast TV is on its way out in the next 10, 20 years, I believe. Story 10, I don't think it'll be wiped out, but I do think a lot of digital designers are going to be replaced with AI. Reply 1. AI is just a tool for digital designers, is it not? CEOs of companies are still going to need to employ the folks who are using AI tools. I work as a chief creative officer and I'm seeing the shifts in real time. I'm also seeing a lot of people rejecting AI when it comes to creative outputs because it's all crap and it seems to be at a plateau. That being said, there's a place for AI in the creative workflow, which I am 100% open to and excited by. But we will still need people to test or learn, implement, and have the perspicacity to know what's right based off of nuanced information that AI just can't touch. Reply 2. Cheap work looking for cheap results, yes. But actual quality design built for flexibility, growth, etc. can't be manufactured. There are avenues AI can help, but you won't be able to completely replace it without it being noticed. Even now, you can create a static image or some paragraphs, but building upon that, you'll see it useless if you extend beyond its little limits. It just creates more of the same. Reply 3. The problem with that is that AI art is already starting to be very homogeneous. Diluting even more variety from the pool of unique art styles will end with everything looking similar, as AI will end up learning from iterations of art from other AI. You still need people to come up with different styles, etc., and using AI to enhance that process is definitely feasible. But as it is now, AI can't create really something completely new. It can only produce variations or amalgamations of what it has been trained on. Reply 4. Nope. People who use AI for design can't deliver the full package, make changes accordingly to company strategies, and so on. Nope. It's pretty clear to me that when people say that marketing and design will get replaced by AI, they are not working in marketing. At least not at a high enough level to understand. One thing that has made my work extremely easy, and therefore also fun, is the Real Photography extension. When you just need a bit more of that photography on any side to fit in a layout, you pull out and extend the image, and it generates the new area from the photo. Incredibly useful. Story 11. Late to the party, and this probably won't be seen, but in the USA, locomotive engineers on major freight railroads. Trains basically drive themselves now. All the engineer really does is hit a dead man switch, blow the horn, and ring the bell. A computer runs the train and even tells the engineer when to apply the air brakes. The big carriers are pushing for one-man crews, and General Electric and the railroad electronics companies are pushing for programs that can run the train from a dead start to a dead stop. Locomotive engineers aren't even technically called engineers anymore, they're locomotive operators. Especially with the recent political regime and a new head of the FRA, this reality is coming ever faster. Reply 1. Technically, nothing new at the moment is seen as unsafe in most parts of the world because object detection isn't good enough. But I guess the US would be the first place to implement it. Automated couplers and trains are too long to manually check in case of a defective brake or axle. A coworker worked together with American railroads, and it was baffling to see the differences in safety considerations. Definitely not going to happen in Europe anytime soon, even with the development of a new digital automated coupling. Reply 2. Russia has had automated shunting yards for years. Passenger trains in Czechia are partly automated. ProRail in the Netherlands has done a lot of tests with automated passenger trains and freight trains. The tech is there, and in perfect, closed-off conditions, it works perfectly fine. The problem is indeed obstacle detection, and some countries have more value to this than others. I can recall my team going for information to Israel. There, the automated train tech guys just said, if a camera detects a person, we honk. If a person does not leave, he does not want to, and the problem is his, not ours. In our country, obstacle detection and the prevention of train suicides is actually a really big thing, and every risk need to be minimized completely, which makes the tech very hard to implement. Story 12. My master's in data science feels pretty useless right now. A saturated market in AI is being programmed to do coding, analyze trends, create other models, and prepare reports. It's terrifying, but I hope I'm wrong. Shocked, I didn't see this reply as one of the first comments. Reply 1. I'm you, but around 20 years on. AI currently is used daily for menial coding. It lacks context and spits out semi-usable code consistently. To use it, you have to understand it. We have LLM servers for internal use for employees and to aid with policies, which it does excel in. Coding is always hyped, but as I say, if you know coding and some data science, it's only semi-usable. It's great for heavy lifting, cleansing, and for things like repeating modules with minor tweaks. I'm reasonably confident I'll be alright for 10, 20 years, but I'm fully pushing my children towards more non-tech or data careers. You're between those two timelines, so my advice would be to pivot slightly into machine learning and server management. That would prolong your avenues a fair bit. I think companies will all have offline internal AI models as data protection regulations or policies catch up. But I do think the long-term outlook will be challenging for data science. Reply 2. Stats grad student here. I think AI will actually be just a tool to use similar to how pilots work nowadays. You still need to be able to evaluate models and draw interpretations and things like that. And I don't see AI doing that. At the very least, someone will be needed to evaluate and build the AI models. It'll be the more tedious things like data entry that get eliminated, in my opinion. Reply 3. A friend's daughter just started her first year at college for cybersecurity. I've wondered if her timing is poor given how quickly all this AI stuff is advancing. The world of IT is going to be vastly different when she graduates in 4 years. I won't even pretend to know anything about the field. Perhaps it's something that needs a human to stay a step ahead. But it certainly seems like AI could sniff out inconsistencies and patterns and then strengthen security to account for it. Reply 4. I've been an analyst/lead/manager/senior manager/data scientist, and back to analyst, since the early 90s. I went from having to compile data from paper reports to analyzing millions of rows to building predictive models using machine learning to letting the model run itself, and I just keep an eye on it. The thing the AI still can't do is find the right data to integrate. So if I were new in the field, I would go into data engineering and architecture. Setting up the model, applying business rules, and setting up ETL still needs human judgment. The thing that keeps me employed, for the next 5 years hopefully, is the knowledge I have accumulated about the field and how to ensure data capture and interpret results, and give recommendations to anxious execs.
Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.